Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is Nazir daf Kaf Gimel, and we are going to start at the Mishnah at the top of Kaf Gimel. It's actually a Mishnah that we quoted the day before yesterday at the bottom of Kaf Aleph Amud Bet, and we talked a little bit about it when we learned the Tosfos at the bottom of Kaf Aleph Amud Bet. And now let's take a look at it inside, in its proper place in the Mishnah. So, Ha'ish Nazir ben Nazir. This is going to be a terrific day. Every day doing Daf Yomi, of course, is a terrific day, but we have some very interesting agada today that we will be able to enjoy, and also an amazing story. Welcome, come on in. Okay, so Haisha Shenadra ben Nazir, a woman. No, not today. So a woman makes a vow that she's going to be a Nazir. And she does something that's really terrible. She drinks wine. She said that she wasn't going to, but she did. Or she becomes tamei to the dead, which again, she said she wasn't going to because she said she was going to be a Nazir. She gets 40 lashes. However, if the husband revoked the vow for her, so and even though she didn't know that the vow was revoked, that the vow was revoked by her husband, and she actually violates her Nazirut commitment, and she drinks wine, or she becomes tamei to the dead. So Eina Sofega says Arbaim, she does not get 40 lashes. That's the Tanakhama's opinion. Rabbi Yehuda adds, no, Im Eina Sofega as Arbaim, even though she does not get the 40 lashes from the Torah, Tispog Makas Marta, she does get lashes for her rebelliousness, because she obviously had bad intentions. She didn't know that she was not subject to this. So as a result, she was trying to be wicked. And so as a result, she's going to get lashes from the rabbis. Now, if we look back and we turn back to Daf Kaf Amud Bet, the very first daf of this parak, of the third parak, there is the Tosfos there. If we look at the third to last Tosfos on the page, Rabbi Yehuda Omer im enu sofeges es arbaim tiskog makos mardas, that if she doesn't get the Tosfos actually belongs right here, and it says that Rabbi Yehuda says that if she does not get 40 lashes from the Torah, she gets the makos mardas, she gets rabbinic lashes. And as the Tosfos begins, midirabanan, these lashes of rebelliousness are rabbinic. They're not from the Torah. And why does she get them? Because she was trying to do something that's prohibited intentionally. If you're trying to do something bad, even if it turns out you don't, you deserve a punishment. Perak Basra to Makos, and in the last chapter of Maseches Makos, what does it say? Makos are by in a Torah. When we say that there are 40 lashes, that's referring to the Torah Torah requirement. And of course, by the way, I should just note that although we say 40, that's a shorthand of saying actually 39, because we don't give a full 40. About Makos Mardas. But when it comes to Makos Mardas, when it comes to the rebellious lashes, Beli Minyan, they are given without a number. Rather, one gets the lashes until one listens. Meaning, if one refuses to sit in the sukkah or refuses to do any mitzvah, and they say, absolutely not, I'm not going to do it, then we give that person lashes until they agree to do the mitzvah that they are refusing to do. Or until they die, whichever comes first. Umasafka l'Rebbe, however, the question for Rebbe is about the case here. Deloka al sha'avra. Here she's getting lashes, not about the fact that she's refusing to do something going forward, but about what she did in the past. And so, Deshema dafka mem. Maybe in this kind of situation, because the lashes are only about the past, maybe she should only get 40 visulo and no additional lashes. The dafka kishein rotza l'kayem ota, a mitzvah that only when she's not willing to do a particular mitzvah, makin oto b'li mispar. That's when you lash somebody with the makos marges, with the rebelliousness lashes that are rabbinic, that's when you would do it without number. Aval hacha. But here, shekvar avra, because she already did the violation. She, again, this is a case we're talking about is she became a Nazir. Her husband annulled the vow, or revoked the vow, I should say, and she didn't know that it was revoked, and she went ahead and intentionally drank wine or became tamei to the dead. And so as a result, so lama, and so the Tosfos here on the bottom of Kaf Amud Bet says lama talaka yoter mideoraisa im lo hefer, meaning that why should she in this case get more lashes than she would have gotten biblically if the husband had not revoked her vow. And so as a result, although in general makos mardos is without number, and you can do as many lashes as it takes until the person agrees to do the mitzvah, it could be that in a case where the person is getting this makos mardos for rebelliousness that involves an action that was already taken and is no longer relevant, so then maybe the lashes would stop at 40, just as with biblical lashes. So that is the Tosfos on this Mishnah. So now we turn back to Kaf Gimel Amud Aleph, and we're back again. Now we're in the Gemara. And so the Gemara now is going to try to understand a particular verse and suggest that one case of the, they're going to quote a brisa that's going to interpret a verse in three different ways. And the first of those three ways is based on our Mishnah. And so that is why we're quoting this brisa here. So Tana Rabbanan, we have a brisa. Isha hafe Hashem yislach la, that we have the pasuk in the Torah. This is Bamidbar Parak Lamed pasuk Yud Gimel, where it says her husband revoked her vows. Revoked them, hafe them, but it's referring to her vows. And Hashem yislach la, and Hashem will forgive her. Well, what kind of case is that talking about? Well, the brisa suggests that be'isha shehefer la ba'ala v'hi lo yada hakasam medaber. That it's exactly the case of our Mishnah, where the husband has revoked her vow, but she didn't know, and she went ahead and violated that vow anyway. So whether that vow is one of Nazirut or something else, she said she wasn't going to eat apples, and then her husband revoked the vow, and then she went ahead and intentionally ate apples. So what do we say? Shehi tzricha kapara uslicha. She needs atonement and forgiveness, and so that makes sense, because although she didn't actually do anything wrong, because the husband had revoked the vow prior to her misdeed, her intentions were clearly bad, and so as a result, she needs atonement and forgiveness for those intentions. Ukishahaya magia Rabbi Akiva etzel pasuk zeh. When Rabbi Akiva would come to this verse, haya bocha, he would cry, Uma min nishiniskavin la alos biyado basar chazir va'ala biyado basar talah. Here you have somebody who grabbed onto a piece of meat. He thought the piece of meat was a piece of pork, and a pork is not kosher. But it turns out that the piece of meat that he grabbed onto was a kosher lamb. And so as a result, and yet we say ta'un kapara uslicha, the person needs atonement and forgiveness. He needs to do something to fix himself, and he needs Hashem to forgive him. So in that case, hamiskavin la alos biyado basar chazir, if somebody actually intends to take up a piece of pork and grab and actually takes the piece of pork, how much more so do we need atonement and forgiveness? And the problem is that often we do something wrong and we don't even think that we need atonement and forgiveness. We justify what we've done. And so as a result, that those justifications and that self-justification that Rabbi Akiva saw in his generation, and certainly exists in our generation, is what caused him to cry, is to say, listen, we got to do better. We have to recognize that that when we make a mistake, we have to acknowledge the mistake and do atonement and ask Hashem for forgiveness. And if we harm somebody else, ask that person for forgiveness. Kayotze b'davar ata omer. And this is, we have a similar case that another pasuk that is on this topic, and this is from Sefer Vayikra. It relates to the Korban Asham. And as a reminder, the Korban Asham is the Asham Talui is what we're talking about. The Korban Asham Talui, there are a number of different kinds of Asham, but here we're talking about an Asham Talui. An Asham Talui is a Korban that if you think you might have done something wrong accidentally, but you don't know that you did something wrong accidentally. So let's do the following example. If you thought that this piece of meat was a kosher piece of meat, and you went and you ate it, and it turned out that it was not a kosher piece of meat, well, then you would have to bring a sin offering, and so you would, and so that will be. I'm not actually. Let me just revise that. If you thought that that it was a weekday and you could eat, but it turns out that it was Yom Kippur and you cannot eat. And so as a result, then you have to bring a special sacrifice. So, but then if in fact the situation is one in which you're not sure whether the person did something wrong, well, then not only do you, then you can't bring the sin offering, because the sin offering is only when you know that you did something wrong. So if it might have been Yom Kippur, but it also might have been the day after Yom Kippur, so you don't know whether the person did something wrong, well, then you need to bring an asham. And if it and what's known as an asham talui, and if it turns out that you find out later that in fact it was Yom Kippur, well, then you still will have to bring your chatat, your sin offering. So here we say, what does the pasuk say? This is Perek Hey pasuk Yud Zayin in Sefer Vayikra. V'lo yada v'ashem. The person didn't know whether or not he violated the Torah, and so as a result, he's guilty. The nasa avano, and he has to bear his iniquity, and as a result, he needs to bring a korban asham. Umami tala, that is here, the person intended to pick up a piece of lamb, and then he picked up a piece of pork instead. For example, the person had in front of him an uncertain piece of fat. He wasn't sure, was this a piece of fat that is kosher or a piece of fat that's not kosher? So Amar Krav and Nasav, no. Even given that he would have to offer a korban chatat, if it wasn't a non-kosher piece of fat, he's going to have to offer an asham in this situation, and he needs mishin iskabin la'olaf basar chazir va'ala biyado basar chazir. So al achas kama v'kama. So of course, if the person who wasn't sure whether the thing was wrong is considered somebody who sinned, well, then certainly somebody who knows that they're doing a sin is somebody who requires atonement and forgiveness. So, and Isi ben Yehuda Omer, the lo yada v'ashim v'nasa avono. We can even go further with respect to this pasuk. That if you have somebody who wanted to pick up a piece of lamb, but he picked up a piece of pork, kagon, not just one piece where we're unsure about it, but kagon shtei chatichot, where you have two pieces and one akas. Well, we could use it as hamburgers as an example. So we'll use hamburgers as an example. Akas shel chalev. One is a hamburger that has the non-kosher fat in it. The akas shel shuman, and one is a kosher hamburger that has only kosher fat in it. The nasa, and you take one of them and you don't know which one. You even thought that the one that you ate was kosher, but it turns out you're not sure which one you ate. The nasa, no, you still need to bring a korban asham in that case. So hamiskavin la'alos biyado basar chazir va'ala biyado basar chazir. If you in fact pick up a piece of pork and you actually eat the piece of pork, al achas kama kama, how much more so? And the brisa ends al devar zeh yidvu hadovim, on this thing, on this concept of recognizing that we need to recognize that even when we have potentially proper intentions and it's only a possibility that we did something wrong, we need to feel like we've done something wrong, then how much more so should we be careful with everything that we do? And so al davar zeh yidvu hadovim, those who are sensitive really feel a sense of their sensitivity, and they recognize that this moment is a very sensitive moment for them, that they have to be more careful and they have to try to be better in every situation. Now, we came up here during the course of this review, we came up with 3 different situations. And so now the Gemara is going to, and that was all a brisa, and now the Gemara is going to analyze why we needed to say all 3 of these situations. And so we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines up in the narrow lines on Kaf Gimel Amud Aleph, and we say B'chol Hani Lamanli. Why did we need to give all 3 of these teachings? Again, number 1 is our case in the Mishnah, where the woman thought she was doing something that was wrong, but the husband had already revoked the vow. This case number 2 is there's 1 piece of meat, and we're unsure about its status. In case number 3, there are 2 pieces of meat. We're just and one is kosher and one is definitely not kosher, but we're just unsure about which one was taken. So those are the 3 situations. All 3, the Torah says, requires forgiveness. And so now we're going to try to understand why we needed to mention all 3 cases. So Tzrichin, we need all 3 to eat Tanagabe Isha, because if we only learned the case involving the woman, Hasam, who devayi kapara uslicha, I might have thought that in that case she needs atonement and forgiveness, mishum zemiikara isure kavin, because she actually had bad intentions, right? She had said that she wasn't going to eat apples, and now she ate an apple, and she ate an apple knowing that she had made the promise not to eat apples. So that's a bad intention. So maybe that's the only situation where we need atonement and forgiveness. But when it came to the piece of meat or a piece of fat, he wasn't even sure, and he intended to do something permitted. So maybe maybe he would not need slicha in that situation. And if we talked about the case where we had 1 piece of meat and we weren't sure whether it was kosher or not, so then isura, there is the possibility that the meat is actually prohibited. Whereas with the Abal Isha, the Hefer law, in the case of the woman, where the husband had revoked the vow, there is no possibility of her doing a sin. Her husband had the Hefer la Ba'ala De'atera. That situation, what she did, even though her intention was bad, it was not. She did an action that involved no sin. So I might have thought that maybe we should just follow the action. It comes to tell us that no, we have to follow both the action and the intention. So lo tzibai kapara uslicha, maybe that would not need kapara and slicha, maybe that would not need atonement, and so we need to teach both of them to tell us that in fact, even if you don't have the wrong intention and you have the right intention, but you do something that might be wrong, that also requires forgiveness. The Iyidmar Hani Tartik. Now let's say, so we've now seen why we need the first 2 cases. So what if you only had those first 2 cases? Why would you necessarily need the 3rd case? So Haba Amina Hani Tarti, who desagi lahom b'chaparoslicha. I might have thought that only in these cases can one achieve atonement and forgiveness. Delo ikva asura, because unlike in the 3rd case, you have an actual piece of non-kosher meat that is present. And so you have real non-kosher. So maybe in that situation, you don't even get atonement and forgiveness. And so in the case where there are 2 pieces of meat, 2 hamburgers, one that has kosher fat, one that has non-kosher fat, where you have a real non-kosher item, maybe I would say that you don't get an opportunity for atonement and forgiveness. Kamash Milan Deloshna. That doesn't make a difference. You can get atonement and forgiveness whether you have bad intention and you don't do wrong, or you have good intention and maybe you do wrong. And even in a situation where you actually have something prohibited in front of you. And indeed, the point is that we should learn from all this again and be sensitive. We should be among those sensitive people and realize that if we need atonement when we don't do anything wrong, but we have bad intention, or we do something wrong, or we do something potentially wrong, even though we don't have bad intention, well, then how much more so when we go through our day and we actually know that some of the things that we do are wrong, do we need to have atonement and forgiveness? Okay, so now that we've covered that, let's discuss further some other cases where intention matters. So the Gemara is going to quote a verse and attempt to identify the case that it is describing. And again, intention will be very relevant. So let's take a look at the case. So Amar Rabba Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, so Rabbi Bar Chana said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, let's take a look at this verse. Ki yesharim darkei Hashem v'tzadikim yelchuvam ufoshim yikashluvam. That the ways of God are straight. It's like a straight road. And the righteous are able to walk in it. But for some reason, those who are negligent, those who are sinners, they trip in that road. So even though the road is straight, and even though the righteous are able to walk in it, for some reason, those who transgress seem to make mistakes and they are not able to stay the right path when they are in that road. So what do we need? We need an example where we have one road. It's the same road for the righteous and the transgressors, where the righteous do the right thing and the transgressors do the wrong thing. So what's that like? So according to Rabbi Yochanan, this is like two people who cook their Pesach offerings, who roast their Pesach offerings, they over the fire, meaning that they do the right thing. They're going to eat the Pesach offering. But one of them eats it in an appropriate manner to fulfill the commandment. And one of them is like so full and stuffed that he's like, I'm not going to really eat it. I'm not really in the mood for this, but I'm going to eat it because I'm a pig and I like to eat and make myself fat. So the one who eats it for the right reason, that's an example of the righteous walking in them. And the other one who ate it not appropriately with the wrong intention, that's the person who's going to transgress. So we have one, namely eating the korban pesach, and we have two different ways of doing it. One that the righteous do, and one that your transgressors do. But Amrle Rish Lakish says, no, that can't be. Because think about it. Hi, Russia Karisle, you're going to call this person who ate the Pesach offering, the korban Pesach, you're going to call him a sinner? Look, I agree, he shouldn't do it that way. He should eat the Pesach offering with the right intention. But Pesach miyakavit, but he still did the right offering. He did the offering, and he did the right thing. So shouldn't this be a mitzvah? And now Tosfos points out that we have what appears to be a conflict here. Because if we take a look at the Tosfos on Gimel Amud Aleph, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down, Pesach miha ka'avid, that mashma de achila gasa shma achila. We seem to see from this example that eating when one is totally full is considered eating. But v'kasha de parak basar de Yoma, because in the last parak of Yoma that deals with all the halachas of Yom Kippur, and the last parak is the one that deals with all the prohibitions in modern day. Kamrinan, what do we say? Ha'ochel achila gasa, that if somebody on Yom Kippur eats when they are already full, the Yom Kippurim on Yom Kippur, patur, they are exempt. They do not actually have to bring any offering. The lo shma achila, because that is not considered eating. So how do we explain that here achila gasa, eating when you're full, seems to be eating, but over there it's not? But Omer Rabbeinu Tam, so Rabbeinu Tam says to trey in yonei achilas gasos, that there are two kinds of eating when you're full. Yesh, the tray achilas gasos yesh. There are two different kinds of eating when you're full. Bahu de yoma, when it's talking about on Yom Kippur, kagon shenafsho katza be'achila, where you couldn't possibly eat mirov sovo, where you're totally and completely full, and there is no benefit to you whatsoever from eating. But here you're not so totally full. You're just but you're not really hungry any longer. And so as a result, you don't want to eat. So those are the two different ways of understanding how so there could be two, even though it's the same term, it could refer to two different things. So as a result, Rish Lakish suggests another possible path for explaining how we can have one path that is straight and the righteous are good and the wicked are not. So Ella Mashal Shnei Bnei Adam. We'll say that we're talking about two different men. Ze Ishto v'Achoto Imo. They're both sleeping in a room with their wife and their sister, and it's a dark room. V'Ze Ishto v'Achoto Imo. And the other one has the same situation. L'Ze Nizdamna Lo Ishto. This one, they took one of the women and had relations with them, and this one took the wife and was the right woman, obviously. V'Zen is damna lo achoto, and the other one took the sister by accident. Zeshin is damna lo ishto tzadikim yelchuvam. Again, the Hashem will guide the person who's righteous to make sure that that if they do something where it could go wrong, that they'll choose the right path. V'Zeshin is damna lo achoto. Whereas the other one who took the wrong woman, uposhim yikash lubam, that's how the transgressors will stumble. So the Gemara asks, one second, midami, are these comparable to our pasuk? Ana kamrin chadadera. We're talking about one road, but here, hachot shnei drachim, you have two different actions that were taken. One took the sister, one took the wife. Of course, they're different. So Ella Mashal Lodu Shnei Beno Savimo. So we're going to try number 3. Effort number 3 is the story of Lot. So let's remind ourselves of the story. So Lot is living in Stone, and Stone is a very wicked city. And God says that God is going to destroy Stone. And after Abraham tries to negotiate for their safety, Hashem says, even if there are 10 righteous people, I won't destroy the city. But unfortunately, there aren't 10 righteous people, so God is going to destroy the city. But God sends an angel to save Lot and his family. And so Lot and his family are saved. But on the way out of town, Lot's wife turns around and turns into a pillar of salt. And so Lot and his 2 daughters are all that's left. And they run to the mountains. And the daughters think that there's no one left in humanity, that the entire world has been destroyed. And so they say we have to have relations with our fathers so that we can procreate and create future generations of humanity. Otherwise, there will be no humanity left. So let's take a look and see what the story is. So Ella Mashal Lot Shnei Beno Savimo. Hein Sheniskabnu L'Shem Mitzvah. The daughters both intention to do a mitzvah, meaning that they realize that if without any humanity left, there would be no earth. So they are the righteous who are engaging in the proper action. On the other hand, Lot, who was doing something wrong, but he would stumble with them. Now, how did the daughters have relations with Lot? They got their father really drunk. So we will talk about that in a moment. So first, the Gemara asks, well, maybe Lot also wanted to do the right thing. So I'm a Rabbi Yochanan. If we take a look at every word in the pasuk there where it talks about Lot, every word in that pasuk can be analogized to another pasuk that involves some kind of improper behavior. Because it says, Vayisa Lot, that Lot raised up. So, V'tisa Eshes Adonav Ezenaha. So too, we can have with Yosef, the master's wife raised her eyes to look at Yosef, meaning again, in illicit relations. Esenav, and we have Esenav. Kihi Yashra Ve'inai, and saying too, she is fine in my eyes. That is in connection with Shimshon and Delilah. So again, in an improper relationship. And Vayar, and he saw Vayar Ota Shchem ben Chamor. So to Shchem saw the Dinah and did something improper with her. As Kol, and so again, that's the next word. As Kol Kikar HaYarden. This is when Lot looked and saw the Jordan plain, and Kiva ad Isha Zona ad Kikar Lechem. That again, we have a pasuk. This is in Mishlei that references Kikar in connection with a harlot. And so as a result, we see that the Kikar that was referenced in connection with Lot is also has something to do with immorality. So Kichula Mashke, that is Lot saw that the Jordan Valley was well watered. Elcha acharei ma'avai nosnei lachmei umeimai samri ufishti shamni v'shikuyai. That we have this pasuk from Hosea where it talks about mashke shikuyai, that it is well watered. So there too, it's talking about going after one's lovers, and so again, it's talking about illicit relations. So we can't say that Lot was intending to do the right thing because Lot's mind was already in the gutter. The Hamenas Adis. Well, 1 second. As I mentioned a moment ago, wasn't he intoxicated? So as a result, it was completely against his will. He didn't have any choice. So Tana Mishum Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanai, that Rabbi Yossi taught in the name the son of Rabbi Chani taught. It was taught in his name. Lama nakud alvav uvekuma shel bechira. There's in the Torah, in the actual Torah scroll, there's a dot over the letter vav in vukuma, regarding the first daughter getting up after having relations with her father. Lomar shebishva lo yada. So that tells us that the Lot didn't know what was happening when they lied down together. About the kuma yada. But he did realize what had happened after the fact. And so as a result, umay havale me'avad. Well, 1 second. Why do we care about that? What happened. And so my hava. And so as a result, maybe again, we should view Lot in a forgiving manner because everything that happened was against his will. So nafkamina delefanya akrina. The lo ibai lemishtei chamra. That what happens is that given the fact that he knew what happened on the first night, so Lot shouldn't have gotten drunk on the second night. So what do we see? We see that Lot, and so we've answered the question. When we say that the roads of God are straight and the righteous walk in them, but the sinners stumble in them, what we're talking about is a situation where you could have two people doing the same action. You have Lot's daughters who are doing the same action as Lot because they're engaged in relations together. And yet the daughters have the right intention and are trying to fulfill the mitzvah of fulfilling the world or filling the world with humanity, whereas Lot is just focused on the illicitness of the relationship. And so he is the wicked stumbling, whereas the daughters are the righteous walking in them. And so there is, in this regard, recognizing the righteousness of the daughters, there is incredible Rav Moshe. And so I want to thank Rabbi Rosner for pointing this out in his daf. This is on, if you have the Igros Moshe, it's volume 8. It's on page 15. And here we go. In the beginning of the winter, in Taf Reish Pei Bet is 1922. Yes. Chala echad miba'alei habatim. So one of the people in the community got sick. V'nafal mishkam, and he was on his on his sick bed. B'min choli muzar ulshono hisnafcha b'piv, in some kind of strange sickness where his tongue became humongous. Kasher takif le alma v'rabbeinu balavakro. And so the world, the neighborhood heard about it. And so the Rabbi Moshe Feinstein went to visit him because he was sick. The person said, everybody needs to leave the room because I want to talk to our Rabbi Moshe Feinstein in private, because I want to tell him why I'm sick. L'dvarav Shavua Kodem, that he spoke in the previous week. L'chein b'Shabbos, Parshas Vayera, on Parshas Vayera, which is the parsha that discusses this. Hiksha Ketzad Zachu Benos Lot Shamashiach Yichem Etzayan. They couldn't believe that this person spoke evil about how the daughters of Lot ended up being the progenitor. They are both the great-great-grandmothers, lots of greats, of the person who will be the Messiah, be our Mashiach. Avshalo Boshu, the Gilu Yarayas, they weren't embarrassed about their illicit relations that they did. Sha'asu, the Hodil L'Shebeneyan Heim Me'avian, because they specifically chose names that said that their children were from their father. The Diber Aleim B'derech B'Zion, and I talked about them. The sick person says, I talked about them in an improper way, in a way that was belittling of them. V'layla, that night, Hofia B'Chalomo Shtei Nashim Zukenos, 2 old women came to me in a dream. Zukenos Ma'od, very old. Shirashan Ufneyan Mechlusim, with covered heads. V'amru Shehem B'no Lot, and they told the guy in the dream, we are the daughters of Lot. Hein Hosifu V'amru Lo V'amru Lo Shishamu Es Ta'anaso. They heard his complaint, meaning that the dead on some level heard what the living were saying. Ubo me'olam ha'emes la'anoslo, and they were coming back from the olam ha'emes, from the future world, in order to respond to the complaint that this man had made. Hein Tanu, and they explained Shahayu Yechoel Lomar Sheme'achar Shehein Mimishpachat Abraham V'nitzlo B'derach Nes Misdom. They explained, we were saved because we are from the family of Abraham, and we were saved through a miracle. That makes us special. Lo hayatolim behem masas nus. You should not say that we are improper and that we did some kind of improper illicit relationship. Because what could we have said? We could have interpreted everything of our pregnancy in connection with a miracle. We could have said that God was what impregnated us. And we could have created a new religion just like Christianity. And yet we called our children Ammon and Moab. In order to make clear that even though we could have, every child born in this world is born of a natural father, of a human father. And it was with this merit, Zachu, and this is why they merited to be the ancestors, the grandmothers, great, etc., grandmothers of the Melech HaMashiach. And we'll see that both of them are actually ancestors of people within the kingdom of David. Od Amru Shehu Chet Gadol. And so the person who was sick explained they did not have ancestry.com, but they did have ancestry, meaning everybody has an ancestor. So, okay. So the person says that he sinned a great sin. That his talk about them was improper. Because he spoke about them in such a derogatory manner. And he was punished just with an appropriate punishment. Kimeraglim, just like the Meraglim, that his tongue got fat, that he would become, have this strange illness and become sick and die. And when the man ended his story, he said, as Panav Elakir, he turned to the wall, the Niftar La'olamo, and he died. Rabbeinu Ra B'kach Inyan Amiti. And so Moshe saw in this an important truth. me'achar shehahesber niralo hesber amiti, and that this seemed to be the true explanation for what happened. And it highlights that we should not talk ill of anyone, that we need to give people the benefit of the doubt. That here one could try and say terrible things about the daughters of Lot, and yet what do we see in our Gemara? That in fact they had the proper intention. And even though they may have done something wrong, the proper intention can potentially exonerate them. And so even though I have often said that intention, that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Sometimes good intentions can save us. All right, so that is that. Now let's conclude as we finish the daf with tomorrow's as we turn the daf. This is just such a good story. I just had to share it. So Darash Rava said the following: "My dixiv es nafsha." Ach nifsha. Mikiryas Oz, the pasuk says, a rebellious brother from a strong city. As we turn to from Himmel and Bet, umidjanim kivriach armon, and they're like a locking mechanism. They're like the lock bar of a castle. Ach nifsha mikiryas Oz. So what is it? The rebellious brother Zel Lot sheperish mi Abraham. This is Lot who separated from Abraham. Umidjanim kivriach armon. And what does it mean to be like if you're a fighter, if you're arguing, you're going to be like the locking bar of the castle. Shehitil midyanim kivrichin armon, that Lot caused that fighting, and that fighting resulted in a bar, in something preventing people joining Israel. Because lo yavo Ammoni u'Moavi b'kal Hashem, we have a rule that the Ammonim and Moabim cannot become Jews. The male Ammonim and Moabim cannot become Jews. Darash Rava v'yisem Rabbi Yitzchak, a similar drasha that Rava or Rabbi Yitzchak did. My diksiv l'sa'aba yivakesh nifrad b'chol tushia yiskala, that when it's somebody who keeps themselves apart through, and seeks their own desire, but they will end up being revealed in all wisdom. So what does that refer to? Again, somebody who separates himself because of his own desires, that's Lot. He separated himself because he wanted to live in a more profitable location, namely Stone. And yet he's going to be exposed in the wisdom that in our schools and schools we end up saying that they are prohibited to join the Jewish people, and that is a prohibition that applies forever. Okay, so now we're going to talk with other acts done with different intentions. So Ula said Tamar Zinsa Zimri Zina. So we have Tamar and Zimri. Tamar is the one who set up the relationship with Yehuda, and Zimri is the one in Sefer Bamidbar who engaged in immoral acts with the daughters of Ammon and Moab. And so Tamar Zinza Yatsu Mimena Malachim and Neviim. Tamar, she did something wrong, but she ended up with kings and prophets. Zimri Zina Naflo Alav Kama Rivos Misrael. And when Zimri did something wrong, many people of Jews, many of the Jewish people died as a result. And so what do we see from here? So we see that intentions matter. That when you do something wrong, then you are going to, if you have the wrong intention, then it can have real ramifications. And so Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, Yidola Averu Lishma, Mitzvah Shalol Lishma. That Rav Nachman went so far as to saying, based in part on what we said about Tamar, that you could say that a transgression, a sin that you commit for the right reason is better than a mitzvah performed for the wrong reason. So for Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, well, and second, what about the statement of Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav, La'olam Yasok Adam B'Torah U'B'Mitzvos, that we should always engage in Torah and the mitzvah, Afilu Shalol Lishman, even with the wrong intentions, Shemito Shalol Lishman, Balashman, because you'll come out and say that when you don't have the right intentions, you'll end up with if you don't have the right intentions initially, in the end, you'll come out to having the right intentions. So doesn't that show that a mitzvah performed for the wrong reason is better than a sin, or at least is not worse than a sin performed for the right reasons? Ella ema mitzvah shelo lishma. No, so all right. So we'll say that they're equivalent. A transgression for the right reason is at least equal to a mitzvah for the wrong reason. Diksiv, and we have a pasuk that could suggest this. Tivorach minashim Yael, Eshes Chever Hakeni minashim ma'ohel tivorach. That when it came to Yael, Yael was the one who saved the Jewish people by seducing Sisera into her tent and then killing Sisera. And we say that she should be blessed with the women in the tent. And man nashim sheba. Well, who are these women in the tent? That's Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. Those are the Ima'ot. So amazingly, Yael, who did something wrong, is going to be compared to Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, who didn't do anything wrong. So Rabbi Yochanan, Sheva be'ilus Baal oso Rasha, and ba'osa Shah, that in fact Sisera engaged in 7 issues of immoral acts with Yael at that moment. Shenemar, Ben Raglera, Kara, Nafal, Shachab, etc. So the pasuk continues, and there are 7 verbs of action that are involved in that pasuk, and so in each connection we're going to have that shows that they did something wrong. And 1 second, how could we potentially treat Yael equivalent to the Ima'ot? Didn't she have some benefit from the marital relations? So Rabbi Yochanan teaches an important principle. Even something that the wicked consider to be good is bad for the righteous. Shenemar, as we had when Hashem tells Lavan not to talk to Yaakov. Hashem says, "Hishamer lecha medaber im Yaakov mitov ad ra." You don't speak to Yaakov whether good or bad. So it makes sense why Hashem would say not to speak bad to Yaakov. Elatova my lo. Why not speak good to Yaakov? Elalav shmamina tova. So ra'ahi, that even the good is considered evil of somebody like Lavan, because Lavan is so evil. So shmamina. So we learn from this that in fact, even if that of course Yael would not have any benefit. And we say the same thing. You can take the same case in connection with Esther. And in both cases, this helps us understand. And in both cases, Tosfos points out that we can understand that what about the general principle of Yara Ba'al Yavar, that one should be killed rather than violate the prohibition against having illicit marital relations? And the answer is that we have a principle of karka olam, that a woman who doesn't do any activity in connection with the marital relations, that is not going to be considered the same situation. And so as a result, that will not be a situation where we would apply the principle of Yara Ba'al Yavar. Okay, so Gufa. Now we're going to take a very quick look at Rav Yehuda Amarav's statement that a person because of Mitosh Lolishma, Balishma. So what did we say? Rav Yehuda Amarav La'olam Yasok Adam B'Torah Mitzvos Afilas Lolishma, that one should even engage in Torah and mitzvos without the right intentions, because once you get into the habit of doing it for the wrong reasons, you'll eventually do it for the right reasons. So Shebischar Arba'im Ushnayim Karbanot Shehikri Bala Harasha that one can see that even in the Torah. And who is this wicked guy, Balak? Balak is the one who hired Bilam, and he ended up paying for 42 korbanot that Bilam offered. And what did he get for those 42 korbanot? He had the wrong intention, but he was doing the right thing. He was offering korbanot to Hashem. And Ruth Hamoavi came from him, because the Amar Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, Ruth Bas Beno Shel Eglon Melech Moav Haisa. So Ruth is a descendant of Eglon, and Eglon is a king, and Balak is a king, and since kingship follows from father to son, Balak is an ancestor of Eglon. So Amar Rabbi Chia Bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So now we return to the story of Lot and teach 2 more lessons, some final lessons regarding Lot and his daughter. So Amr Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amr Rabbi Yochanan, Minayin she'ein v'kadosh baruch hu mikapeach afilu schar sicha na'ah. How do we know that God rewards those who are careful about their speech? Moab, because the firstborn daughter of Lot, she called her son Moab, namely Min Ha'av, from the father. Well, that's not a very clean kind of speaking. So Amar Alei Rachmana, so God, when God spoke to Moshe about the people of Moab, God said the following. This is in Parak Bet, Pasuk Tet of Dvarim. Al tatzer es Moab, al tiskar bam milchama. That when it comes to war, don't bother them. So don't bother them in the connection with war. So milchamahu delo about Iran. If you want to bother them a little bit, as long as you don't get into them with an actual milchama, you're not actually in battle. So all right, you can annoy them. But the ilut Ira dekrise ben ami. But when it comes to the younger son, who is called the son of my nation, which does not indicate that it was actually the son of my father. So Amrale, al titzureim, al tiskarbam. God says, don't bother them at all, and doesn't qualify it with the word milchama. Afil tzeure lo titzarin klal. You shouldn't bother them at all. So we see a positive characteristic of the younger daughter. Now we're going to see a positive characteristic of the older daughter. So Amar Rabbi Chia bar Avin, Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha, La'olam yakim adam lidvar mitzvah. You should do a mitzvah as soon as possible. Because the rapidness with which the older daughter engaged in the improper marital relations by one night, because she was the first night, Zachda v'kadma arba doros Yisrael. As we turn to Kapdal and Amanaloth, she merited to have a ruler before her sister. That and Tosos helps us out here. So if we take a look at the top Tosos, arba doros Yisrael, that there were 4 generations in Israel before the younger sister had a king. Obed, who is Rus's son. Yishai, the grandson, David, the great-grandson, Shlomo, the Ilut Seira, and when it came to the younger daughter of Lot, Lo Havis Yisrael ad Rechavam. She did not have a king in Israel until Rechavam. Rechavam was Shlomo's son, Rechavam ben Shlomo, Sheba Minama, that Shlomo was married to Nama HaAmonit, who is from Ammon. And so Ammon, again, is from the younger daughter. And so as a result, both Moab and Ammon end up being the ancestors of kings and will be, God willing, B'meira B'yameinu, the ancestor of Mashiach. And so we see that, again, if you have the right intention, even if you do the wrong thing, it's not always terrible. Again, we should always try to do the right thing for the right reason. But if you have truly pure intentions, so then sometimes Hashem will make it work for you. But we see, again, it's important to remember as a counterpoint to all of this, Penina, the other wife with Hannah, who teased Hannah in order to get Hannah to pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And yet, Penina ended up burying all of her children. So again, we should be careful not to take the lessons of this Gemara too far. That when you do the right thing for the wrong reason, or you have pure intentions in what you're trying to do, and you end up doing the wrong thing, it is not always going to work out for you. At least with respect to Lot's daughters, it seems like it worked out for them. But again, we should always be careful. Tomorrow, we're going to return to the discussion of Nazirut, and we consider how late in a wife's Nazirut a husband could still revoke his wife's vow, of course, assuming that that was the day that he heard about it. So stay tuned for that, as again, we'll return to a greater, more discussion of Nazirut tomorrow. But again, this was an awesome day with some cool stories, and I hope that, again, we should enjoy all of the topics. I'll check as soon as I stop the recording. Have a great day, everybody.
Have a great day.